All right, going live. Can people hear me out there? All right, Alejandro, how's it going? Good morning, everyone. A lot of fun doing these live things and actually answering questions that people have that's relevant to their lives. So I guess we'll dig right in. Alejandro, you're right there. What do you think of roller versus rail guns? What size do you use for wahoos or marlin from your videos? So I've been using a lot of different spear guns and experimenting a bunch over the last 3 years or so. Just wanted to kind of not get too comfortable in the gear that I was using and see if there's anything better. I thought roller guns were super gimmicky at first, and I was kind of against them just because I have a natural aversion to things with a lot of moving parts, because I do a lot of trips where maybe I can only bring one spear gun in a surfboard bag, and I just want to make sure I can fix anything that breaks on trips, or else I'm stuck. So finally I came around to trying the roller guns, and I think the concept is a really good one. It's amazing. You can use a gun that's at least 10, 15 centimeters shorter, get the same distance with even less kick. So I think the concept is really good. But I think the execution in a lot of roller guns on the market is pretty poor, whether it be the ball bearings, or it's not ball bearings, but the roller itself. There's a lot of cheap plastic ones, and they don't roll evenly on side to side. I think that affects things sometimes. So just more quality products and a better layout. But I use that 120 aim right single roller. I like that gun a lot. I recommend it for sure. And I just got, so that's like my 120 aim right single roller is my typical go-to right now for reef. If I'm diving deep reef, mid-range reef, or even shooting wahoo, I'll use that a lot of times. I just got an Alamani Vela 135 for blue water stuff. So I've only gotten to take it out once and kind of test it, but the thing shoots insane. So there's an answer to that one. Lewis, right on. Thank you. Appreciate it. Hope all is well down in PR. Nick says, noticeably less reef fish on the North Shore from when you first started diving there till today, or not much change? I honestly can say I think there's a little bit more reef fish than there was when I was a kid on the North Shore. And that's primarily due, in my theory, it's definitely due to DLNR putting more regulation on lay nets, and lay nets being a little less in vogue. So when I was a kid growing up, it was not unusual to go out and see lay nets that guys would set these moi nets that would stay out all night. And I'd go diving in the morning as a kid, and I'd see 6 dead turtles in them, sharks, all kinds of fish that'll never be eaten. I'd see lay nets just left and fish rotting. The amount of bycatch on them is just obscene. I don't think there's any good reason to use them like that. So once the nets started going, I think that the reef fish got a lot better. Now all we need to do is ban commercial scuba night diving and probably night spearfishing in general. And I think our reefs could come back a lot more. All right. Tuckamore, Custom Knives, Land and Sea. Hi, Mark. What do you think of the roller spear pole and the best size to use? Thanks for the live chat. Thanks for showing up. So I've never used the roller pole spears. I know my buddy Brad over at Headhunter makes them. He seems to make really good stuff. In Hawaii, I don't use pole spears that much. Like, we use our 3 prongs, which are just super light, and that's just to shoot mostly small fish in holes. Sometimes we're shooting, up to, like, if you shoot a fish that's 6 pounds with a 3 prong here in Hawaii, it was a pretty good day. So I don't have enough experience with the big pole spears to actually give good advice on that. So sorry about that. Wish I had more. Alejandro, what about using a reel on a gun versus breakaway rig? Those Alemanis look great, but very expensive. Excuse me. Breakaway rig is definitely good for shooting bigger fish like wahoo or any kind of blue water. I'll always prefer a breakaway rig. It's less drag that you have to put on the fish. You can let it just run off. Also, nice thing about the breakaway rig is that when you shoot a fish, excuse me, and you are in a sharky place, you still have that spear gun in your hand to kind of poke away sharks if you need to. Railgun for me is just all reef diving and reef diving a little deeper where I know I could run into pelagics. I use a railgun. Hey, Kanaka Toledo, how's it going? Send my love over to Molokai. Wish I was there. Sorry, I'm just hacking away in here. I have my coffee with a lot of layered creamer in it. It's making my throat weird. Oh, that sounded terrible. Evan, hi Mark, big fan, man. Thanks for doing all of this for us. I'm in Wailua. What's your take on spearfishing solo out here in North Shore as long as you don't stretch your limits? My take on it is you should always dive with a partner if you can. It's just safer. You never know what's going to happen. I'm not going to lie. I spent most of my life diving solo. It's not the smartest thing to do, especially in light of so many people blacking out as of recent with all the lockdowns and a lot more people diving. Yeah, it's a tricky one. And you know what? When big sharks roll up on you, it's a lot more fun having a friend in the water with you. I've been chased around for hours on end by those things solo, and especially when you hit the murky water, it gets a bit spooky. It's not like diving at some cage tour, I'll tell you that much. Okay, Lewis, I got a JBL Magnum, is old but is good enough for spear in Puerto Rico. I believe that's a question. I would say get that gun re-rig, put some new shooting line on it, new rubbers, make sure that the trigger housing is trigger mechanism is still holding a spear shaft in there. So like I wouldn't be loading it on land or anything like that, because old spear guns with old trigger mechanisms, you want to have them in the water and make sure that they're working correctly. I've had a couple of guns over the years when I was using I didn't have money and I was using maybe a little bit lower end spear guns, and they end up starting to kind of slip, which means firing on their own, which can be extremely dangerous. So just go give it some space and time, but I wouldn't use having an old gun as a reason not to go out. I'd say just get out and get in the water and start from there. Just take the step. Okay. John Panella and Leilani Pogoyo agree on commercial scuba night and day. Yeah, I mean, we can't be beating our reefs up like that. Some of the commercial guys, they're going out and they're getting, 500 plus pounds, like often 500 plus pounds a night, when they're hitting some of the more remote reefs on good conditions. And it's like, how many years is it going to take to replenish that many parrotfish in an ecosystem? Just to know that you can do a decade plus worth of damage in a night just for some money that's going to get spent quickly is just, it's obscene to me. I don't think it should be legal. Yeah, Evan, thanks. Yeah, only had reef sharks so far. Yeah, the reef sharks are mellow. It's not often out here on the North Shore, but every couple of years I'll get shaken down by a big, thick tiger shark. It's always exciting. Hey, Cannon, how you doing, man? What do you think about wood guns versus rail guns? I like both. I shot a Rob Allen railgun for years, and I really loved that gun. And then I started shooting wood guns, the Rife Euros, for years after that as well. I think they're both great. I mean, it really comes down to what you like as an aesthetic and also where your budget's at. So if you don't have a lot of money, those railguns can be a really affordable option for getting started. And back to what I was saying earlier, is like, don't let not having the preferred gear keep you from getting in the water and just starting. Just the main thing is getting in the water. You can always upgrade gear later if you want to, and you only learn what you really want and what works for you and your way of diving and your location that you dive at by experience. You can get a lot of information from stuff like this, but you got to see what works for you. So just get in the water. Stefan, hi Mark, shout out from South Africa. Thanks for all the information you share and great videos. Thanks. Yeah, love my Safa friends, and you guys are crazy for diving some of those places you do. There's real repercussions over there. Just job. Love the content, dude. Sending my blessings from the Cayman Islands. Right on. Aloha from Hawaii. Uh-oh, we got construction going, so excuse the saws starting up. This is real, guys. This is not a studio. Right on. Thank you, Lewis. Louis Trace. What's up, Mark? Stoked you're doing a Q&A again. Dive fly question. When you reef dive, do you attach a float to your belt, to your gun, or use an anchor that you put down while you do that drop? Okay, so this is the way I do it here on Oahu. I'll take a dive float that's got a dive flag. I'll drag it around, and I just have like a 1 pound lead anchor that I use at the end of that line or tag line. And when I'll swim, and when I get into a good area, I'll drop that little light anchor just outside of the area so I'm not disturbing a bunch of fish, and I'll dive on my reel gun right around that. And that way I just don't like diving with the tag line all the time on reef, because it really hinders how I can use the bottom structure for cover. And it also, the fish are so spooked here in Hawaii. They've been getting harassed for a long time. So I think the tag line does make a difference on reef fish as far as getting them to come in. It makes a big difference, actually. So I like to anchor it close to me and stay within that general circle around the buoy, and then shoot a fish, put it on the buoy, pick it up, move on to the next spot. So I kind of use it as like a mobile home base. One breath diver. We finally got a scuba spear banned on Guam after 4 times getting shot down. Thank God. I mean, it's only going to benefit the next generation. Glad to hear that happening. It's really about what we leave for the next group of Spearos and people who just enjoy the ocean in general and want to be around fish. It doesn't even have to be for Spearos. We're adults. We're close to the environment. I feel like we really have a responsibility to have some stewardship over that, and do the best until we have to pass the torch and we're too old to do it anymore. Okay, so Nick, any advice on pursuing legitimate sponsorships? How did you get on with Costa and other big brands? So I've been kind of a part of that world since I was in my teens, and I still am. So I get asked this quite a bit, and it's kind of a tough question to answer. So I usually kind of avoid it because it's a long answer. It really depends. But what I tell some of the young guys coming up is that what you have to remember at the end of the day is that these companies are for-profit companies. Like, a lot of people might think, like, I hear young guys in the surf world sometimes like, oh, I surf better than that guy. Why is he getting more than me? These companies aren't charities. They have to make a profit to stay afloat. So when they're sponsoring you with gear or whatever it is, salary potentially, or incentives, that's an investment. They need to make money off of that investment. So they need to believe that whatever they're giving you, they're going to make that plus more by your involvement, right? So you have to always keep that in mind. It's like, nobody owes you anything. You have to make it worthwhile for them. Like if you're going to be sponsored by a company, your mindset needs to be, how do I double their investment in me? What can I offer? How many different areas can I be of value? Whether it's, you know, putting the word out on products, design, anything like that. And then it gets also tricky in that you want to, a lot of your ability to help a sponsor is through your credibility. So you can't just go and, for me, I won't promote an item. I don't care if it's a company that pays my mortgage or, you know, a company that's given me a free item online. If it's not something I truly believe in, I'm not going to promote it. It doesn't matter if it's the newest, latest, and greatest thing. I just won't do that because I feel a personal responsibility to the people who are looking for good advice. But that's why I align with brands that I know make really good stuff, and that way it's easy for me. I don't have to say no all the time and be stuck in that position where I feel pressured to represent something that I don't think is quality, that I can't really recommend. So sorry, long answer. Questions are piling up here. Kanaka Toledo, do you go trolling? Yeah, trolling is not my forte, so I just kind of have like a dark cloud over me trolling, and it's mostly because I don't go out a ton. But yeah, I do go take my boat out when the ahi are running. I'm gonna go chase them around. But for me, you know, I like to go out when the bite's hot, and like I always end up coming back to like bottom fishing and stuff where it's a little more action, it's a little more exciting. I just can't do like 3 10-hour days in a row without getting a bite. It gets makes me stir crazy. Cannon, what do you think is the best reef for big fish, flat reef or structure, or a mix of both, and what depth is best? Because I have been diving 60 feet and that looks like the best depth. What do you think? Okay, those are really good questions. So I actually find that the best diving is really around structure, and it can be very little structure. It depends on what's surrounding it. So those flat areas where there's not good structure for a big space, and then there's just this one little structure down deeper, are super productive a lot of times. And it's the same reason why we set fads out in deep water. It's because that floating buoy is going to attract life, because there's nothing else around that is going to kind of spread the fish out. So essentially it's like an African watering hole where all the animals come together because there's no water anywhere else. So I really like to identify those spots. 60-foot range is definitely like a super productive range. That's probably where I shoot most of my fish, is that like 50 to 65-foot range. But then when you go deeper, you can run into more fish, and they're actually a little friendlier because they don't see people as often. Yeah, it's good observations. Kimmy, well. Great job, Marky. In terms of passing on values, what would be the main advice you'd like to give to the next generation of spearfishers? Excuse me. Good advice that I'd like to give to the next generation of spearfishers. You know what? It's going to be advice that I just learned through experience. And it's advice that I wish I would have probably listened to in the sources it came from a little bit more when I was younger in my spearfishing. And that's, you know, when you first get into spearfishing, for years actually, you're just so hungry and amped up to get, you know, your personal best or the biggest fish of a certain species, or just this next one, or get those big stringer photos with all these fish you killed. And I would say, you know, you really have to consider like what the impact is of doing that when you're younger, and really enjoy and embrace the cooking and preparation side of the fish, and kind of spearfish with the mindset of eating it, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to be shooting fish and wasting it for photos. And it's really fun once you get into it. Like, I had no cooking background. I just had to learn how to cook some fish because I was spearing them, because I love spearing them, and I do love eating fish, but I had to learn how to mix it up. And then you find these different species of fish that you actually love the taste of and love the different preparations. And it helps actually spread out the impact that you have as a spear fisherman, because you're not just targeting like, go kill every big goat fish all the time. Nowadays, I pass on a lot of the goat fish that I see just because I know everybody's hitting them. Because I know there's other options through learning how to cook and prepare and clean different kinds of fish on the reef. I can go out and be like, this is what I feel like eating tomorrow night and tonight. So that's what I'm going to target. Cut average. Aloha, Mark. What is your advice on getting better at pipe? Do you think it is safer to catch bombs from second reef? I would say pipeline is a tough nut to crack. I mean, you got the crowd, you got the wave. When I was a kid, like, people thought I was crazy because I would just go on closeouts all the time. But the real reason I would go on closeouts all the time is because I knew I would never learn how to make a drop and make a bottom turn and pull into the barrel if I just waited for good waves. I was at the bottom of the pecking order. And that was back when pipe was actually a lot rougher back then. Like, you'd see girls straight up get beat up, like punched in the face by a grown man. So you knew as a little kid that there's good odds that could happen to you. And I seen it happen, you know, like you could really get straight up pounded out by a large grown man. So I knew I was low in the pecking order. I was like, I'm never going to learn at the rate that I want to learn unless I just go on closeouts and bad waves. And eventually, after time of sending it and risking my life on a lot of waves, I learned. And I also kind of built that trust in the other guys out there that maybe if a good wave did finally come to me, they knew I wasn't going to paddle and back out and nobody would get it. They knew I was going to send it. So, I mean, it's dangerous, but kind of got to do what you got to do at pipe. Kimmy. Oh, hi, Auntie June. How's it going? Hope you're well. Have you had a screwdriver yet this morning? Hope you guys are well over on Maui. Caught Krause. What is some good training to do out of the water for breath hold practice for big wave beatdowns or free diving? I really like doing like the CO2 and O2 breathing tables. You can do that in the comfort of your own home, sitting down. Never do these things when you're sitting in traffic in a car. You would imagine that it goes without saying, but people do that and pass out and get in wrecks. I like that. And just the full inhale to full exhale, like some people say 3-stage. I kind of like to break it down to 5-stage breathing warm-up. So just like stretching your lungs to its full capacity and then going full negative exhale, helping to loosen up everything in your chest and your guts. That helps a lot before a big wave session, because you don't want your first breath hold of the day to be when it's life and death. You want to warm that up. And I go over this a lot in that Mark Healey's Guide to Heavy Water online course through the Inertia. So I go through all of this stuff. Sage, advice on getting Mu and Uku. My advice on getting Mu and Uku is pick where you want to engage with them. And by that, I mean, like, don't pressure them too much from the surface to where you can scare them away on the surface. I don't do a dive unless I know I got good cover below me. I don't like to do a dive out in the wide open. I'd rather wait and shadow that fish or that school of Mu. I'd rather shadow them from a distance to where I'm not actually pushing them and scaring them until I'm over a spot with good cover. And I think picking your battles, especially on these Mu schools, because if you screw it up on the first chance or the first dive, you often don't get a second chance, especially here on Oahu. It's a little different outer island. They're not pressured quite as much and they seem a bit friendlier. This is the best advice I've heard for new Spearos. Thank you. Eric James, hi from Maine. We recently had our first fatal shark attack here. Surfers and water recreators are freaked out. Any thoughts on sharing the water with apex predators? Yeah, man, I'm sorry to hear that. That's not good. Yeah, we here in the, you know, the Northeast and the West Coast of the United States, there's only going to be more of this or more interactions with these great white sharks. The conservation has been working, obviously. There's more. You see a lot more juveniles over the years, at least from what I've been observing. Yeah, I mean, it's pick your times. If it's in a place, you know, where it's seasonal and you know more are coming in, time of day is usually a factor, but and also not surfing alone, being in a group. But I mean, at the end of the day, there's no perfect idea. I see some of the shark shield stuff that could potentially help, but I don't know. I've seen motivated great white sharks up close and personal in the water, and when they're moving like that, I have a hard time believing that they're gonna stop. You know, some of these things might make a difference for a curious one that's looking around and kind of has watched you and did a couple passes already. Yeah, I think some of those things could help for that. But when I've seen them move at full speed with intent, holy moly, I don't know how much difference anything would make once they're committed. But yeah, it's tough. There's just a certain amount of risk that's involved, and just trying to make good decisions, surf with other people, not super early in the morning and not super late in the evening. Water clarity is probably going to play a big factor. So if it's murky, you know, they're hunting silhouettes on the surface a lot more. It's probably more likely you can be confused with a seal or sea lion. So that's my advice for what it's worth. Aqua Prig. Tips on finding deep water fish, Onos Mahi. Tips for that is, I mean, go to where the guys are catching them fishing. That's usually a good indicator. Yeah, and just being up to date on what's happening at the harbors and the fishing reports. Also, you can, throughout the course of trial and error, find other places that are maybe not where the rod and reel fishermen are catching them all the time, and then you kind of find a rhythm of when those places turn on. Cannon, what is the best depth to chum to bring up those huge ukus? Well, guys are chumming deep. You know, you can chum for ukus any depth from 30 feet all the way to like 200 feet. People do it. For me, the ukus are so well trained out here on the North Shore that I don't shoot them off of chum, barely ever. So what I do is I use the chum to get them in an area, and then once they eat all the chum, I do a bomb dive down to the bottom. And usually when they've eaten all the chum, they kind of get curious by me and they lock in on me when I hit the bottom and start dusting. So that's how I use chum for ukus around here. Other places, the ukus will come up and, you know, they'll get chummed but I don't experience that too often out here on the North Shore. All right, let's see. Aqua Prig. Okay, what was? Okay, so Aqua Prig, you were asking about finding Onos and Mahi. Said question comes from Kauai. So yeah, same thing on Kauai. Find out where that Ono run is. I know the 40 fathom line is typically around most of the islands where guys are whacking Onos. Guys shoot them in close on the reef too, but that's usually pretty seasonal, and it's not a guarantee on the reef. They're not as regularly there as where people are catching them in the Ono lanes trolling. Thoughts on Shark Shield E-Spear, worth the price / annoyance? I haven't used them really at all. I would have interest in using them just to keep sharks off your fish in really sharky places. Like if you could slide one of those down your shooting line in those places where you're shooting big dogtooth tuna and stuff like that, where the sharks just go bananas if you don't get your stuff in that fast. I'm not worried about having it on my body so much, because I know it's usually just what you make of the situations and how you interact with the sharks. If a shark is going to come and take a bite out of me, it's going to be a super motivated shark that there's something up with it. Like, you know, whether it's a gray reef shark that's just being territorial, or if it's a large tiger shark or great white shark that is, you know, has done a long migration, is nearly starving to death. That's why I always really keep an eye on the big skinny sharks. They're usually the ones that will give you a hard time. It's not necessarily those giant fat ones all the time, because you always have to wonder what their motivation is for the actions that'll potentially play out. Eric, no problem. HPR123, how do I get an invite to dive with you or Kimmy or Justin Lee? I seem to learn something every time I go with someone new. Gotta get to know us first. You know what, the great thing about spearfishing is you get to choose your company. And I think that's good for everybody. And I like taking new divers out and everything, but I really got to know you first. Cut Average, I appreciate it. I met you fishing pipe shore break last year. Did the paddle out at the eddy, earned the lineup, and surf some smaller pipe with that himself. Right on. Sage Manishi, tips on getting comfortable at deeper depth. Getting comfortable at deeper depth, a key is getting used to that pressure. So basically, once you hit about 100 feet, it feels like on your chest, it feels like what a full exhale would on land. And just getting used to that compressed feeling in your chest, it takes a little time. Yeah, so I would say, you know, in a safe environment, not necessarily in the water, is like do a lot of exhale breath holds, and you'll see how fast you feel like you need to breathe. And that's how you feel as soon as you get to depth. That clicks in, that pressure on your diaphragm. It gets super uncomfortable quickly, but you can learn to deal with it, and people do learn to deal with it. But you just have to experience that as often as possible and work on your flexibility in your lungs and rib cage and all of that, and makes it a lot more bearable. Oh, we got Healey coming for an appearance. I do feed my dog. We don't abuse this dog. She's just very old and has cancer, unfortunately. So when you see her, she's skin and bones. She can't gain any weight. We're not abusing her. Daniel Mann, hey Mark, big fan of your channel. When would you say is the best time of year to visit Hawaii is from a spearfishing perspective? Hey Daniel, I like your YouTube content, man. You're doing a great job. I would say my favorite month for spearfishing in Hawaii is probably March, April, May, June. So the springtime. We get lighter winds, get more of those light and variable days. Our trade winds that blow are northeast or east-northeast, and that's, you know, probably 300 plus days a year. I'm going to have to shift. I can have light across my face. So that time of year is good. It's also good for like job fish. The fish are spawning, so they're a bit more active, and also you can still shoot the bigger wahoo. The bigger wahoo show up at that time of year. So yeah, let us know if you want to come out. And what island I'd like to work in on Axis Hunt too. Okay, here's Co3N3K33. Sorry, did I miss something above? Earlier question. Thoughts on Shark Shield, price and annoyance. Okay, I went over that. I'd like to work on an axis deer hunt too. So there's state hunts for axis deer on the state lands. They all got canceled this year because of COVID. Most of the axis deer hunting in Hawaii is on private land in ranches, so you got to get permission. It's not like a lot of places in the continent in the US where you can go knock on a door and you got a chance of getting permission. Over here, you have a snowball's chance in hell of that being effective. So you kind of have to either go and pay for a guided hunt or have some kind of a connection, and those connections are pretty tough to come by. I hope that helps. But the state hunts are something to take a good look at. John, thanks, Mark. Good job. It's always great hearing your advice from a Spiro's perspective. Dive safe. Aloha from Maui. Need to get back to work. Oh, man. Well, have a good day at work. Thanks for the kind words, and keep the gills wet. What are your thoughts on navigating a big crowd on a big wave swell? Navigating a big crowd on big waves it's not easy, and it can be very frustrating because you got a hard enough task in front of you already surfing these big waves. It's like there could be 5 guys out and it'd still be very difficult. But then all of a sudden you have to deal with the crowd factor, and that's tough. And that's where one of the beauties about big waves and kind of like how that crowd dynamic works. It's still something where you have to earn your rank. You have to show up. You have to go on waves and prove that you will go. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. So just like I did when I was younger, I started, on the shoulder taking scraps, and I worked my way in. And, there's a lot of waves that go unridden on big days. And at a certain point on the real big days, there's a lot of waves that people just flat out don't want. And sometimes you got to go on those to prove your place, and you work your way up. And then, at a certain point, if you've earned enough respect, people see you paddling and they're not going to try to take your wave. That's kind of how it goes. When are you going to do USOA Spearfishing Nationals? Mile High Adventures. So I haven't done any spearfishing competition in years and years. I wouldn't mind doing a nationals as long as we got a fun crew together. I was doing spearfishing events back before. I just loved the challenge of it. It was a lot of fun. But you end up spending so much time and you spend money and you're doing a really difficult event that's just kind of for pride. Or I wouldn't mind doing a couple of years and trying to qualify for world championships. But I kind of lose motivation if, like nationals is going to be in Lake Mead or something like that. I don't really have a huge desire to go and spend a week scouting and diving in a lake. Although I would love to do some lake diving, but you know what I mean. I could take that same amount of money and go do an amazing dogtooth tuna spearfishing mission, or go shoot giant wahoo or big yellowfin tuna somewhere else in the world and go see an amazing place. So that's kind of how I weigh it out. But I wouldn't mind doing one again. Kanaka Toledo. Water's actually pretty clear over here. The wind's been kind of coming around the corner. It kind of seems like our trades start kind of east in the morning, and as the day rolls on, it turns a little more northeast. So it's just the way the island bends. So the trade wind chop murkier water seems to come in around midday. So it's definitely morning dives over here. I know Kauai is like even more wind affected than here, so I'd imagine it's pretty rough over there. Where are you going? Oh, Mile High Adventures. Also, when are you going to do a collaboration with Daniel Mann? Well, he was just on here. I gave him the invite. If he wants to come to Hawaii, come on down. Let's go dive, man. Lance, aloha from Idaho. Curious if you ever plan on going to the Big Island and hunting with Justin Lee and Ryan Myers. Mahalo. I hunt with Justin. I've been going and hunting and spearfishing with him for years. I got it. If you look on my YouTube channel, there's actually episodes with Justin Lee. Went and dove for a couple of days with Ryan Myers and Justin as well. So yeah, constantly going over and visiting and having fun. Also have done elk hunts with Justin, Arizona mule deer hunts with Justin, lots of spearfishing trips. So we travel together a lot. Gary Gardner, can you break down your boards, dims, shortboard setup, gun, and at what size wave you choose to ride which board? So my shortboard is typically a 5.6, riding WRV Ron Meeks boards kind of across the board, with the exception of mixing up some Paizel paddle-axe on the guns, but mostly Ron Meeks. So yeah, obviously full range of boards. 5.6 would be a short board. 6 to 8 foot pipeline, I'm going to ride a 610. I got a deep 6 channel Meeks with glass on fins that I just keep here for pipeline on those kind of days and sizes. Once pipeline gets a little bigger, like there's second reef waves, I'm moving up into that 7.2 range. And when it's like really big pipe and a lot of wash throughs, I'm going up to 8.0, 8.6, just to be able to navigate that mess of a lineup and get out of harm's way when the steamroller sets come through. Waimea, I'm usually riding like maximum a 9.8 if it's a giant day at Waimea. Peahi, I'm going to be riding smallest 9.8, largest 10.6, usually about a 10.2 is my average board for Peahi when it's like 20 foot solid. But yeah, that's the general breakdown. But nobody wants to see me surfing small waves. It's very below average. So I usually I go hide somewhere when I surf small waves or go diving. Javier, cheers from Costa Rica, Mark. Would you consider coming here to give a freediving spearfishing seminar? It would surely include a high-quality strike mission. If so, where can we send you an offer? Hey, Javier. Yeah, so I do trips through my company, Healey Water Ops. So I do a handful of privates trips a year, whether it be instruction or setting up killer adventures anywhere in the world. So HealeyWaterops.com, HealeyWaterops.com, and shoot an email through there. Ryan, you should come out to San Diego. I'll treat you to some beer and some good food. I'd love to meet up with you and talk spearfishing. Right on, man. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, we'll see with these travel lockdowns when that actually ever happens. I appreciate it. Appreciate the offer, though. Sage, next time you come out to Big Island, you open to teach a new Spearo? I'm usually in and out because I have a 1-year-old and my time is pretty spread thin. So I'm usually like flying in the day, meeting up with some friends, heading straight out on a boat, coming in from the boat and going straight to the airport. So I'm usually not spending a lot of time. I'd love to have more time to do stuff like that, but I'm spread pretty thin being a new father at the moment. Next time you come out to Big Island. Okay, Drew. Mark, can you please share the latest with your sponsors and what happened with Monster Arrive at all? If someone already asked, no worries. So yeah, it's taken a long time. Actually had kind of a vision of the companies that I really wanted to work with. And part of that vision was not just being, an ambassador, like, hey, I use this stuff. It's all companies that I really wanted to work on product and design with, and kind of, like I said, not just have a surface level relationship, but it be a really quality brand that I know and trust. And like I said earlier, I can, with a good conscience, promote their products, but also be more involved in the product design, the marketing, the ideas for trips, be more involved in the company because I like building things. I like being a part of things. I like putting things out there in the world and seeing if it sinks or swims. So, that's been a big part of a lot that I've done. Lululemon Men, I've been with them for almost 3 years. They've been awesome, really great company. I've been working on some really good projects that we'll announce. Costa Sunglasses did a co-designed signature sunglass with them. The Sampan, been loving that. It's been received super well. Protect is a supplement and sunscreen company that I'm actually a co-founder of. So I'm involved there. Braymont Watches, I did a signature design watch with them, which we sold out, which was great. Benchmade Knives with them, got a lot coming up in the future. Toomey Luggage, I designed a bag with them. So it's a Healey Water Ops Toomey collaboration that did really well. WRV, always wave riding vehicles, that is, always working on surfboard designs. And there's just been, and Yeti. So it's like I'm using Yeti products all the time, giving feedback on those products. It's a great partnership. St. Archer Brew, they're helping support my YouTube channel, and I'm doing fun things with them in the future. So it's like, as I was saying, it's like I have more of an involvement with all these brands, and it's been a lot of fun. Okay, I'm going to go with last question. My battery is about to die, and I'm outside because it's probably really loud inside with the little one, so I can't plug in. Okay, go to the new one. Aloha, Mark. Just picked up my first ski. Any recommendations for spearing off the ski and launching from Haleiwa? My recommendation is go with another person, run them through how to operate the ski. Don't let the ski drift from you. Like I would say, make sure that the current's not too strong, or it's not about to switch to get really strong if you're anchored up, because it can be very difficult to get back to the ski. Definitely just invest in whatever it takes to get a good anchor with a lot of chain, because if that anchor rubs and you lose the ski, you can be in big trouble. The currents get pretty darn strong out here, even if it could be a totally glassy day, no swell in the water. But if we got big tides around a new or full moon, the current can be cranking like you cannot fight it. You would not be able to get back to a ski. So I'm just saying, like, really know what the conditions are doing. The current's not always going with the wind. So what happens is the current and the wind are going in opposite directions. You go with the current and your ski goes straight out to sea. So, just don't get separated. Don't push it if you're feeling uncomfortable or uneasy, like with those conditions. Just don't chance it, especially when you get towards Kayana Point. Kayana Point is a dangerous place. That current is so strong out there that if you get separated from your ski and you get in that trough where it gets all rough, the odds of somebody finding you is, besides, somebody calling the Coast Guard and them using the FLIR technology to see you with a heat signature at night. And that's assuming that, you didn't get hypothermic by then and some large predator didn't take interest in you. Like, you want to be really careful with it. It's a great platform to use, but just use precautions. So sorry if I'm missing any more questions. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm on 2% battery. I really appreciate everybody showing up. I wasn't sure if there was going to be just a few people, but great questions. And have a good one. Get those gills wet. Aloha.